Welcome to another episode of Shots from the Winchester podcast, where we explore leadership topics from a variety of perspectives. This podcast is brought to you by Greencastle Consulting, your nation's premier strategy execution firm. Today, we're diving into the leadership subject, and we're talking to Robert DeSousa of Eckert Siemens Attorney at Law. Robert has a phenomenal history of leadership positions throughout his career, including 28 years in the National Guard. His perspective on leadership is exactly the type of thing we like to talk about on this podcast. So let's dive in. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being on the show. We've been working on getting you on the show for probably a month or so now, I think, since Vet Fest and everything. Yeah. So thank you so much for your time today. I know it's precious. And you're a lawyer as well. I know you got a lot going on, a lot of cases probably set up and everything like that. Just to start things off, let me introduce you to our audience. Okay. Sure. So this is Robert DeSousa.
Correct.
Robert J. DeSousa. All right. So you are, let me just read your breakdown here. Robert, nearly 40 years of experience in the government and legal sectors. Prior to joining Eckert Siemens, you served as a director in the U.S. Senator with Senator Toomey for over 12 years. That's awesome. During which time you oversaw 7 regional offices, managed state staff. You supervised the selection of the U.S. district judges, and you were the voice and ears of the Senate and the senators in Pennsylvania and Washington, D.C. That's awesome. An Iraqi war veteran. You served in the Pennsylvania Army National Guard for over 28 years. All right, that's. Thank you for your service so much for that, especially. Guard held numerous positions in leadership, including the state judge advocate. You provided counsel in the adjunct general, Pennsylvania and senator staff. I mean, like you've got a hell of a record, especially when it comes to leadership. Chief counsel in the PA Department, State and Inspector General in the Commonwealth. Chief executive officer of Vartan Group. Am I saying that right?
The Vartan Group, yes.
Vartan Group. And leader in building and land development in central Pennsylvania, and general counsel for wealth management firm R.E. Harper Associates, among other things. So thank you so much. You've got a wealthy history here in the topic of leadership for sure. So definitely glad to have you on the show. Let's jump in and just talk about some of this. Let's talk about your experience in the Army, in the National Guard. You were there for like 28 years. You retired as a colonel.
Yes.
Yeah. Give us a little bit of.
I went in a little later than most. I was 33 years old when I went in with no prior service. I was direct commissioned in the Judge Advocate General's Corps. And I think, the really important thing for people to remember when we look at our society today, several years back, there was discussion, by some protesters and all about the 1%. And they talk about the 1% being the wealthy. Well, that's not truly the 1% today. Right. Only 1% of our peers wear the uniform of their country in any fashion whatsoever. And the opportunities that are available in military service, the general public is not aware of. They assume that every position in the Army, for example, is an infantryman. Well, no, there's 70 some different skills behind that infantryman doing his or her job. When I went in, I learned a lot. I was able to serve the Army, but the Army also served me. The Army also teaches leadership from every echelon. So, it was a great experience for me. I stayed until I had hit my mandatory retirement date and went out. But it was a very great experience.
That's awesome. So what drew you to want to join the service at the age 33? I know a lot of people, they come right out of high school, they have an idea about what they want to do, but like you had a whole life before even
Yeah.
joining the military.
Yeah, and I think that's I think it's very important because so few of our people in our general society um, are currently serving.
Mm-hmm.
They're not aware of all the options and ways to serve. So
Mm,
I thought for a very long time that the Guard and the Reserve were simply options for when someone came off of active duty. I did
right.
not realize that you could join the Guard and Reserve directly, that you could be served, enlist, or be commissioned in the Guard and Reserve directly. So part of it was that delay. But you're right. By the time I was in, I was already an attorney. I'd been a federal law clerk. I'd been an assistant.
Oh,
I
wow.
was an assistant United States attorney. Uh, so but it was, here's this opportunity to serve that I wasn't uh, aware of, that I could go directly into the reserve component and do that. And so that's what I did when I became aware of it.
Wow. That's fascinating. So you already passed the bar. You're already a lawyer, and working in service in that way. So what motivated you to want to join the military from that
Well,
point of view?
I think our military, is one of the honorable institutions of our country.
Absolutely.
The you know, there's so much turmoil and turbidity in our society that the fascinating thing about our Army in particular, but our military services, you really, you hear all these things in the greater society, racism and sexism and all this
Yeah.
kind of thing. And sure, there are parts that exist within the military that way, but when push comes to shove, here's an institution where you might be a conservative, I might be a liberal, you might be
Hmm.
black, I might be white, Asian. Nobody cares.
Right.
Ultimately, I mean, there's going to be always an offshot here, but the bulk of it, they don't care. You're a part of the
Right.
team. You're a part of a brotherhood.
Right.
I always, I think sometimes it's always fun, because we can tease each other. We can,
Hmm.
we can joke about, well, hey, I heard you joined the Air Force. That's the closest thing to military service there is. That kind of. But you can
Hmm.
only say that when you're also someone who's in. And I
Yeah.
think, what I tell people regarding, who are considering joining a military service, especially in the reserve component,
Hmm.
I said, listen, you are joining the largest fraternity in the world. When a
Right.
fellow vet finds out you're one of them,
Hmm.
they will try to help you. It's just
Yeah.
a total, and I have done that myself countless times. People I didn't know, but they reached out or whatever. They're a fellow vet. Let me see what I can do to help. And certainly,
Yeah.
the platform that Greencastle is on that
Hmm.
same platform of people working together and finding solutions out there for your clients. And we do the same
Absolutely.
thing at my firm, Eckert Siemens. And we have a veteran initiative at our firm, Eckert Siemens. Because sometimes a vet wants to talk to another vet about their legal matters,
Absolutely.
even if it's not a directly related veteran thing. So I think that leadership component is critical. I think that brotherhood fraternity thing is critical. It breaks down barriers and helps get things done.
Wow. Yeah. Absolutely. That's eloquently spoken, especially when it comes down to it. Like when you think about leadership and you think about the military, it really sets you up for those scenarios, for leadership scenarios, and even as a like an E1, E2, E4 or something like that. You're leading squads, you're leading
Yeah.
maybe even a platoon, so you're getting those skills. And for one, you learn where you fit in, you know, and you went all the way to being a colonel, which is a phenomenal feat, obviously, because that's with 28 years in, that's an amazing move. What was your journey? Where did you start before you became a?
I think that's a great question because I think one of the things that military service teaches you is the critical importance of perseverance, keeping at it. I'll be honest. I went in at 33. I had not done a push-up or sit-up since high school. I had not, I certainly didn't, run. The whole PT thing was like amazing. And I had no prior service and yet was commissioned as an officer. So
wow.
I, because of my skill as a lawyer, but, the point being, at the time, I was afraid I wouldn't make it to captain. But by persevering, by keeping your nose to the grindstone, it worked out ultimately to make it to full colonel. And had many opportunities along the way, but it's not to say it's always easy. It teaches you that need to persevere, and also to reach out to those within the service, within the fraternity, who will help you along the way.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing. What skills do you think you acquired from the military that you're using now? You were a lawyer, you still are a lawyer. You have the service that you kind of like inserted in the middle here. That type of leadership versus the leadership that you're in now. How has that informed your abilities moving forward now with
I
Edward
think
Siemens?
I think the leadership and the followership component that the military teaches is important. It teaches you how to lead, how to follow, but it also teaches you the importance of structure, the importance of clarity of an order, clarity of a mission. And these things, you can have a very well-educated person. You can have a lawyer, you can have a doctor, an accountant, whatever, but they're not necessarily through their college education going to learn, hey, we have acronym for everything, and BLUF, bottom line up front.
Yeah.
Give the person I need X done by Y date, by very specific. And sometimes in the wider world that has not had that experience, they can be very, very unorganized about the way in which they present things. The military forces you to put your thoughts in an organized fashion, to be succinct, and I think that's a great thing that it teaches. And as you pointed out, it teaches it at all ranks. It teaches it from the enlisted rank up to the general officer rank.
Yeah, that I think there's a lot of value in that, especially if you're like a little snot-nosed kid coming out of school, and you're ready to go into the workforce. The civilian workforce has value as far as understanding how to work with people on a social level. But if you have that military background, you have that military skill background, that it helps you understand how to present yourself, for one, that military bearing, how to take an order and how to give an order. Especially with that clarity. I think part of it is like with especially leadership, if you don't have clarity in your leadership, you have a bunch of people that are wandering around with no real direction, and I hear that a lot in people, especially people that are in civilian jobs. They don't have clear direction, and their leadership might just be reactive leadership versus, detailed leadership. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right, and I think that that the military also teaches the necessity of information flowing up and down. In other words, not being afraid to say, sir, I'm not sure I fully understand the mission you've asked. I'm not sure, or let me repeat, you want me to do A, B, C, versus sometimes in the civilian, they just would sit there, the person leaves and they're like, I don't know really what he wants, and they're going to flounder because they didn't have the fortitude to rephrase it, to ask for clarification, and I think that's important.
Yeah. And it's easy to get lost. A lot of people don't want to feel to say, for a better word, stupid, in a moment, or ask a stupid question in the midst of when they should be asking that question. You should be asking for that clarity, just to be sure. And if your leadership doesn't have the ability to clarify what it is that you're trying to convey to them, then you're both just ate up.
Yeah, and I think that's spot on. When if you look at and observe, units that work well, whether in the military, whether you have that back and flow. The situation where you give a mission assignment or whatever, and that if you have a situation in which you don't have that flow, that sergeant who may have been in for 30 years is going to say, yes, sir. And he's going to do what you said. And then when it fails, he's going to say, well, I did what you said. Now, what he didn't do is he didn't say, sir, you realize that you've left out X step and the whole thing is going to come tumbling down. And that's a matter of if you build the right team and right trust, you're going to have that back and forth. Sir, you forgot, if you learn that leadership, and leaders who fail don't listen. They don't. They want to simply command. And I think a lot of people misunderstand in that the military. They think in the military it's all just the general says X, everybody jumps and runs. That's not. That's when that does happen. That's a toxic work environment, and it fails.
Right. Absolutely truth. Yeah, you have to have that back and forth. You have to have that understanding, and I think that's one thing like Greencastle does pretty well, especially since everyone here is a veteran or active service here, and we all understand that. Sometimes a decision may come down, may not be recognized 100% that something is missing from that component, of that command. It's like, hey, listen, we do this, that's great, but you might want to consider this as a situation that could occur if we do that. What do you say about that? And that way you got that back and forth, and you're not just like a machine, being, having your buttons pushed. You're a human being. You've got, thoughts and stuff like that. You want to take that command, but you also want to make sure that you're understanding and executing that properly as well. And sometimes maybe that doesn't fully conveyed. So that's really cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly right.
Yeah. Let's talk real quick about obviously Eckert Siemens. And earlier in the conversation right here, you were just mentioning how it's important that a veteran can communicate with a veteran. I know Eckert Siemens wants to work with veterans.
Absolutely.
You were here at VetFest as well. So, and I do remember seeing you at VetFest. I love the handlebar. So if you're listening to this and you're not seeing the actual video, he has this amazing handlebar. I'm so jealous. He has this amazing handlebar mustache, which is like, and a bow tie. You've got a whole look. I love it.
Well, this is the third time that we've participated in VetFest, and we participate on a twofold level. So, first of all, Eckert Siemens has a Veterans and Military Initiative in which we not only recognize the veterans that serve in Eckert Siemens in various legal roles, but we want people who are a veteran, who have legal issues, who have government relations issues, businesses, et cetera, to know that they can talk to another veteran about it, and we can try to put them in the right place. So Eckert Siemens is a firm with 325 lawyers all throughout the East Coast. We've got offices in Philadelphia, Harrisburg, Pittsburgh, Boston, Richmond, all over, and we do a wide range of case work. I also do government relations work, largely with the General Assembly of Pennsylvania, with the state. So people that have a bill that they want to see passed, or a bill they don't want to see passed, or regulations, companies that are very concerned about a bill that might affect their ability to do their work. So I do a lot of that work. But our firm, if you're a veteran and hey, you at least want to run it by another veteran before you decide what firm to go with or whatever, we provide that ability. So that's one of the reasons we've been participating in VetFest for several years. The second is one of our clients is the Army Heritage Center Foundation in Carlisle, PA. The Army Heritage and Education Center in Carlisle is free, open to the public. It has a museum. It's got a really magnificent trail outside. And most importantly, it is a record center. It has records from individuals, from units, for researchers. People like Ken Burns research there and all the rest of it. And so when I'm down there, I'm usually wearing the hat both of for Eckerd Siemens, the firm, and also for our client, the Army Heritage Center.
Yeah, wow, that's awesome. Speaking of hats, you do wear a lot. You've had a lot of, I want to say careers, even though you're still running. For one, Department of State and the Inspector General of the Commonwealth. Can you speak on that? Because that by itself seems like it's a whole career.
So I like to look at it, I really can't hold a job down. So that's the way I put it. But I've had a really great run with some really awesome positions in Pennsylvania over the years. I started my career as a law clerk to a federal judge in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, and then I was hired as an assistant United States attorney. I was assistant United States attorney in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and then I became the chief of the civil division, actually created the civil division in the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Middle District of Pennsylvania, and I was in Lewisburg. I then went in when Governor Ridge, a vet himself, was elected. I became the chief counsel of the Pennsylvania Department of State. That agency oversees the Elections Bureau, the Corporations Bureau, the Bureau of Professional and Occupational Affairs. So all of your licensing, if you're an accountant, if you're a surveyor, all that licensing goes through there. The Charities Bureau. That was a fascinating and interesting job. And then in the second Ridge administration, he appointed me Inspector General of the Commonwealth, and we had about 400 employees. In which the mission was to ferret out fraud, waste, and abuse under agencies under the governor. We basically would prevent about $200 million worth of welfare fraud, for example, every year. That was an absolutely a wonderful position. Had great staff there, and then I went into the private world. I was with the Vartan Group, where I ultimately became the CEO. I was then with Ari Harper, as you had mentioned, and then I had my all-expense paid vacation to Iraq for a year when our unit was called up. Came back, and shortly after that was with Senator Toomey, who I was with for 12 years.
Wow, that's an extensive. There's a lot going on with that. I really appreciate your journey here. That's amazing. That's a lot. One of the questions that I want to get into with you is why law? Yeah, why law? What made you? Because before the Army or before the National Guard, you were already a lawyer.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So that's hard to say. I'm older than most of your listeners and all the rest. And my generation was the Perry Mason generation, where Perry Mason would, the great thing about Perry Mason as a lawyer was he always got the bad guy to confess on the stand. It was like always, But I think that whole aura of that, there was no one in my family that was a lawyer. And I started out on that kind of trial lawyer path because I then became a federal law clerk and then an assistant United States attorney, so a trial lawyer for the government. But interestingly, both the military service and then a change in the way in which I was an assistant U.S. attorney, but then I became the chief of the civil division. From there, I was the chief counsel at state. So, I went from, chief of civil division, I had like 6 or 7 attorneys under me. Chief counsel of the Department of State, I had like 40 attorneys under me and another 80 investigators. Inspector General of the Commonwealth, I now have 400. So I had that lawyer background, but I was more and more excelling in the leadership component. And and what I think is really important for people as they have a position and all, I think it's really important to have sort of an idea of where you want to go, but not be fixed on it. Life is not like a ladder. You take this step, doors open, windows close, and new opportunities come up. I didn't go to law school and say, someday I want to be inspector general. That opportunity presented itself because of other opportunities. The position I got when I was when I went with the Vartan Group, that was largely because of another organization I belonged to, that when the owner of that company was looking for someone, another person says, well, what about Bob? That's the way that I got with Senator Toomey, was from, I didn't know he was looking for a state director. He approached someone I knew who recommended me. And I think one of the problems of younger people today is so much, they want to do so much by Zoom, they want to do so much work from home. They don't belong to the Lions Club, the Kiwanis, they don't belong to the VFW, the American Legion, the military office, they don't belong. What that means is they don't build that additional bridge of someone who will say, oh, I know Eric Diamond. He's the number 2 over at Greencastle. Why don't you talk to him? Okay, because they haven't built that bridge. And I think that's many of the positions I had, I was certainly qualified for them, but it's not just the qualification, it's the fact that someone knew me to recommend me to allow me to compete. And I think that's very, very important. I think for our younger veterans and all, they don't have to belong to all of them, but they ought to belong to a veterans organization. They ought to belong to something in their community, anything from a running club to the Kiwanis Club, to be in the community. And I think that's important.
That's very important. And you touched on something that I love talking about, and it's about building bridges, not burning bridges. Because,
absolutely.
Building bridges, and you did it so eloquently, being able to connect with people and other people remembering you because you left an impression of who you are, your integrity as a person, and your ability to do the job correctly, to do the job. People recognize that, and they will reach back out to you. Like I have my own personal business as a video producer, and I don't even have to advertise. People already know me out there. They'll send me stuff. Just, hey, I was thinking about you. I saw this pop up on my radar. If you're interested and you got the time, check it out. And that's a beautiful thing for me. That recognition of integrity is really important, and that's all you have as a human being, as a man, as a business person, whatever it is. Your integrity is very important, and you have to be about your word.
I agree completely, and I also agree completely regarding the burning bridges part, in which people sometimes have, I've had it many times in my life. A bad thing happened. Someone treated me in a way that I thought was not fair. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you have to make the determination. Do I want to win the battle but lose the war? I look at that when on the burning bridge end. So if, let's say you worked for some company or whatever, and they did treat you wrong. The reality is, the rest of the world, if you can walk away with it and say that these things happen, the rest of the world can't know the details. Will never know the details. If you can go and sue, you can do whatever, you win the battle, but the rest of the world just says, oh, such and such is a troublemaker. Such and such.
Exactly.
You have to balance it. And if you make those contacts, as you were saying, on the positive side, on the building bridges side, you keep up with people, you're whatever, they you're now on their radar, and I think that's important.
That's very important. I think that is that's key, especially if you're in business, and just in relationship building in general. Like there's this whole ghosting culture. I've worked with people where I've
Right.
been like, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is great. But then they just disappear. They don't respond to your text messages, your emails, or anything. They just disappear. And I'm like, what is that about?
Yeah, that I find that, certainly, you know, that's absolutely to me incomprehensible.
Yes.
When I was with Senator Toomey, one of our maxims in the way in which we conducted business with constituents was a promise: we will always get you an answer. It may not be the answer you want, but we'll
Right.
always get you an answer.
Get you an
And
answer.
people, number one, they want the answer they want. They want the answer yes.
Yeah.
But they respect if the answer is no, if they got an answer, they got closure. I'm sorry,
Right.
we can't do that. Or it's not going to work. At least you know. But this the ghosting thing or whatever. Again, that's a part of that whole cylindering, stovepiping of people. The whole not being in a part of where you just it's like, well, I deleted. It's like deleting an email. You're not deleting the person. They're still out there.
They're still out there. That's the wildest thing about it. It's like you'll be talking to somebody and then they just decide without actually having any like conversation with you that, oh, this isn't for me, and then they're just gone. And it's like
bizarre.
I'm gonna run into you. We're gonna see each other from like across the room or something like that, and we're just gonna have this weird animosity from now on because you decided not to respond or at least pick up the integrity to say, okay, thank you. I recognize this or blah blah blah. I appreciate it. Let's move on. This relationship obviously isn't going to work. Fine, that's fine. I respect you. I respect what you do. I think that's all we want to hear for the most part. We just want some kind of response.
And it really is. And again, I think the military service helps teach you that, for those who are willing to listen. And it's not only the right thing, the honorable thing, but it's also a good business. In other words, you may be out, either in your private business on the video or for Greencastle for a client or whatever, and all of a sudden, they just as an aside say, oh, we've got this terrible HR problem with our office with, some employee or whatever, and you say, hey, do you ever think of reaching out to the Eckert law firm?
Yeah.
That's the way it works, and they say, well, why Eckert? Well, we know they're good with veterans. We've talked with them, et cetera, and so on. That's the way the world works because we are human.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I think we get lost in the fact that we are communicating through screens to faces. And if you've grown up watching TV all your life or being a part of that kind of culture or the pop culture, watching TV, watching commercials, it feels out of touch. It feels like it's away from you, that it's something that's not attainable or you can touch it. So it also gives you this impression that it doesn't exist because it's not there. And so you can just like turn it off, just like a TV show. Like I'm done with this show. I'm not going to watch it anymore. But we're doing that with each other at this point. And it's like, is it technology? Is it the growth of, I think about it like this. Everything changes. Everything evolves. We used to think dinosaurs were dinosaurs. Now we think they were half chickens, So now we're learning more. And as we learn more, we evolve in our decision making, and so like things that I used to think about, like Pluto was a planet, now it's not a planet, now it's back to being a planet, things I learned growing up in school, aren't exactly are not being taught the same way. The way I learned math is not being taught the same way, so there's a part of it where it's like I get it, and some of these kids that are growing up now into a society that has social media. I didn't grow up with social media. I grew up with a phone with a squiggly cord, and I had to walk across the room and it would fly out of my hand sometimes. Those are things that you forget about as you grow into the technology. Now I have this computer, in my pocket, which can tell me pretty much anything that I want. And I still don't know everything, but this thing seems to. If I ask it, it'll give me everything I want.
No, it's. I do think you're right. We have to embrace the good parts of technology, but we also have to understand um, humans themselves, humanity does not and has not changed. Our
Yeah.
needs, the way we're wired,
Mm,
doesn't change.
that's a good
And
point.
when you talk about, politics, the word polis, from the Greek, you're talking about the interaction of people with each other.
Hmm.
And we can't allow the technology to push us more and more into a stovepipe where
Hmm.
we get everything from our phone. We defriend or people who disagree with us, etc.
Yeah.
And therefore we start being in an echo chamber
Mm,
of people that are become not real. So
yeah.
I think we have to embrace the technology we have, but we have to realize that what their downfall falls are as well.
I see some of the manipulations. I see some of the
Yeah,
things that go on in the background and like how to get people to follow you, how to get people to recognize your brand in so many ways. And I don't want to call it manipulation as much as it actually is, but there is a value there because you are getting people to pay attention to you,
yeah,
in some way or fashion or form. And we all do it in our own ways. Back in the day, it used to be a 30-second commercial on Price is Right, or
right,
something everyone was watching, or soap operas or something like that. You get these little commercials that pop in, Eckerd Siemens, like
right,
recognize
right.
us, here we are as a law firm, you might want to join us, and now we have social media, which really expands the classic phone book in a way. When
Right.
you were looking for
Yeah,
somebody in the phone book,
sure.
now you're online and
Yeah,
everyone, like there's millions of people out there and stuff like
yeah.
that. That's a good segue for me. How does Eckerd Siemens stand out from other lawyers or other firms, I should say, especially since you're
Yeah,
regional?
I think the really fascinating thing with Eckerd Siemens uh, is that it is a firm of 325 lawyers all
Hmm.
throughout the East Coast, the national reach, top shelf lawyers. But we have we're rooted in Pennsylvania. We have a Pennsylvania rooted mentality. In other words,
Hmm.
when all said and done, we charge you know Harrisburg rates. We don't
Hmm.
charge New York rates. We don't
Mm.
charge Philly rates. We are flexible in the way in which we address needs of our clients, a very
Hmm.
client first outlook. So a lot of the firms that are our size or bigger are without that flexibility. It's
Yeah.
X dollars an hour towards whatever. And I think Eckert supplies a wide range of services at really reasonable, flexible prices that
Hmm.
work for the client. I think that's a real differentiator.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's respectful too. I really enjoy that. I have not been to Harrisburg.
Ah,
Yeah, surprise, right? I live in Philadelphia for quite some time, or at least in Pennsylvania for quite some time. I'm from Delaware originally,
yeah.
and there's some things I want to head out to see in Harrisburg.
Well, I know a lot of times, a lot of times people from Philly don't think there's anything beyond the Turnpike extension. But no, Harrisburg is, the region, Harrisburg, Hershey.
Mhm.
A lot to see.
Yeah.
At a lot of great restaurants and great places to visit at prices much better than Philly can do.
Yeah.
Uh,
And
and
Manhattan.
certainly for anyone who's served, there are there's the National Civil War Museum in Harrisburg. There's the Army
Mm.
Heritage and Education Center in Carlisle. There's obviously all of the stuff at Gettysburg. All of those things are within a 40-mile radius if Harrisburg's the epicenter. To go down to Gettysburg, go to Carlisle
Yeah.
to see those things. Carlisle Barracks there, one of the oldest Army barracks that there are.
Mhm.
There's a lot of really really nice things in the Harrisburg area.
Leadership. Okay,
Yes.
so as a leader, as you've been a leader for so long now, what is something that we can give our audience today that is a good takeaway? Maybe something, a leadership tip, or something that you think is pretty valuable to your experience, that you seem to call on.
Well, uh, so if you're so I put it in two different buckets. There's
Okay.
general leadership, the skills of people skills, of being conscious of people and all. But then there's leadership when you actually have people that are assigned to you, the people that work for you. And I would say the biggest, most important thing, again, going back to our human nature wiring, we are hardwired to see in someone the things that we do not like.
Yes.
Or the things in which they're doing wrong.
Yeah.
We are not hardwired to compliment people on the things that do right. And so one of the things, one little trick that I used to use, and there's a couple ways to do it. You can take a challenge coin in the morning, put it in your right pocket, but don't want to leave your work till you put it in your left pocket because you've complimented somebody on something they do. You've gone in and said, and it can be something, you just gone into the one person and say, hey, I just really want to thank you. Every day I come into the office at 07:30, you're already there. And I really appreciate that. Very little thing. People, it's not just, a lot of times I think people that don't understand leadership and all think that people are motivated only by like, okay, here's your raise or here's how much money. People certainly want money. There's no question.
Yeah.
But they will be loyal to you. They will stick with you. They will work hard for you if they feel that you recognize them, that you thank them in a personal sort of way. One little trick I used to use once in a while, and this was with the older phone systems, although it certainly works, with a cell phone, is I would purposely call someone like after work. So when they came in the morning, the little flight light was flashing on their phone.
Yeah.
So you come in, the little light's flashing, and your general reactions can be, oh gosh, this is gonna, and you answer the message, and it's, hey, I just wanted to tell you, you do an awesome job for us, and I appreciate you. Hope you have a great day.
Yeah.
Boom, changes the whole, So find those ways to see the things that you appreciate people, give them clear direction, so reward them, on a personal level for achieving the things you've asked.
That's beautiful. Honestly, even from childhood, we recognize, accolades. We want to be recognized, like, Mom, look at me, kind of thing, and that doesn't end as an adult. You get value from that. And just as you said so eloquently there, you're getting people to buy in and to stick around, because you are recognizing their value. I really love that, and I hope the audience is taking that away from today's conversation and going to utilize that into their leadership and their management skills moving forward. So thank you, Robert J. DeSousa. I'm going to make sure I say your name correctly, DeSousa. Thank you so much for being on our show. Thank you so much for your wisdom, your 28 years in the National Guard as well. Thank you for your service. And we definitely want to see you around Greencastle. We have our happy hours. I know you're a distance away, but if you find yourself,
far to come down for the happy, unless you're going to drive me back to Harrisburg.
Exactly. We'll get you on that G6.
There we go.
But would love to see you around here more often. Thank you for coming to Vet Fest as well and bringing your thing out. And thank you for providing services for veterans and being that veterans voice over there for Eckerd Siemens. Make sure you guys, just before we go, give us some information on how people can reach you at Eckerd Siemens or reach Eckerd Siemens.
I think the easiest, they can just go online, EckerdSiemens.com, look up Eckerd Siemens, all of our offices, all of our attorneys are there. My email is R Delta Echo Sierra Oscar Uniform Sierra Alpha R DeSousa at EckerdSiemens.com.
Nice. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. And for you all out there, we have conversations like this. We put new episodes up every Tuesday. If you like what you hear, definitely give us a subscribe, put a little follow, definitely leave a comment too. And if you have any questions about this conversation, we'll answer that down in the comments section below. So thank you guys for listening. And thank you again, Robert, for being on our show.
All right. Out here.
All right.